what I do is look at this and see where this is. So 5 minutes before 12. That way I know pretty well what to do. You ready to start, Randy?
I think so. We don't smoke marijuana in Muskogee. We don't take our trips on LSD. We don't burn our draft cards down on Main Street. But we like living right and being free. And I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee, place where even squares can have a ball. We still wave Old Glory down at the courthouse, and July 4th's the biggest day of all. We don't make a party out of loving. We like holding hands and pitching woo. We don't let our hair grow long and shaggy like the hippies out in San Francisco do. And I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee, place where even squares can have a ball. We still wave Old Glory down at the courthouse, and July 4th's the biggest day of all. Leather boots are still in style if a man needs footwear. Beads and Roman sandals won't be seen. And football's still the roughest thing on campus. And the kids who still respect the college dean. And I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee, in a place where even squares can have a ball. We still wave Old Glory down at the courthouse, and July 4th's the biggest day of all. July 4th's the biggest day of all.
Fantastic. Randy Wallace. Randy Wallace, minister of Oak Ridge Baptist Church, and a great friend, a great minister, a great church out there at on Taylor Mill. And Randy, I'm glad to have you with us. We got a special guest today.
Amen.
Oh, I tell you, he is special. You know, in life you have a lot of special things happen. I happened to be a teacher many years ago, back in the 1970s, and I had two really great students that went on into government and politics. Others too, great students. In fact, one of them, Joe Kreidler, who said say hello to you last night. I saw him at Bob Evans. He came up and he said, I heard that you were having Marcus on the show. He said, tell him I said hello. And but anyway, I had Marcus Carey right here sitting beside me, and Harry Rankin in the class, and as a teacher. And I must have done something right, because both of them, Harry Rankin, who's now in heaven, by the way, or I'd probably have him sitting here too, Randy, but he's in heaven. But he went on to be chairman of the Democratic Party and hold Democratic office, and Marcus went on to be chairman of the Republican Party, and a good conservative Republican who's been active statewide and nationally for years. And I've got him here tonight to talk about the elections. But he's an attorney, and a very fine attorney too, I might say, a barrister. And but one of the things I wanted to have him talk about today is his new avocation, and that's because I had an uncle that was the first chairman of the horticultural department at the University of Kentucky back in the 70s, Dr. Bill Bingham. And Marcus has taken his life and his wife Harriet's a new turn in their years, and they are not only they're still practicing law, handling specific cases, but he now is probably one of the best farmers in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Him and his wife Harriet and their team down there. And I can say that honestly because I've been down there and seen its operation.
Yes, you have.
And so he's our guest today about the elections. And Randy, I want you to chime in anytime you want to here. And this was a most interesting election with the turnout that it had and the diversity that it had and the way things were divided up the way they were. But I want to let Marcus talk about that a little first, and then I'm going to put my 2 cents in worth here. And of course, I got my Trump Pence hat out there, so I sort of gave myself away a little bit.
It's deer season tomorrow. I thought maybe you're headed for a tree stand when we were done here.
Well, Randy's a deer hunter himself. And are you going to get to go deer hunting this year? I know you got a lot of illnesses with Mom.
Tomorrow will be maybe an hour or so. I'm going to get my gun sighted in as soon as we finish the program today.
I got 5 gallons of stew cooking at home.
Hey, man.
I tell you what, I can tell right now it's going to be a fun day. Mark Carey, I want you to analyze a little bit the elections for me. I spent, probably 4 or 5 hours yesterday calling across the state, finding out what the vote totals were, what was happening all across the state, and the results in several areas. And there's some unique stories to be told about where this vote was cast and who it was cast for. But I'd like you to give us your professional opinion on it and the results and what it means, if anything. Can you do that for us?
I'm a casual observer these days. I'm not intimately involved anymore because I don't like the atmosphere. It's gotten to the point, in my opinion, where politics is focused on the wrong things. And ever since the election, in which, at least as it stands right now, Governor Bevin came in second. Everybody, including pundits, politicians, newspaper reporters, and unfortunately even some of Governor Bevin's friends, have all started pointing out all the flaws with Governor Bevin as the reason why he didn't get the most votes. And that's one of the reasons why I'm an observer and a commentator on politics. So if you're asking me for my comment, let me just start by saying I think the first thing we need to do is focus on the good things in the election. And probably the best thing that everybody can point to, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, is that unofficially right now we had the highest vote turnout of any statewide office election since 1995. That's nearly a quarter century since we had as many people get up, decide to go participate, and take charge of their own future. That is good news.
Absolutely.
That is great news, and that's something we all celebrate together. If you're a Republican, you could celebrate that the down ticket races, that is everybody beneath the governor's race on the ballot, on the Republican side of the ballot, did marvelously well.
Yes.
And in fact, if you even stop and ask most people who did Michael Adams run against for Secretary of State, some people would know, but most people don't even know. Even Michael Adams seemed to be very surprised by the outcome. Mm-hmm. Most of his response to the election has been overjoyed and surprised, I think, to some degree. And then, of course, Daniel Cameron, the first Republican elected Attorney General since before World War II.
70 years.
And just an amazing result for Republicans. So I think that although Republicans have a lot to celebrate, and certainly those who supported what appears to be Governor-elect Beshear at this point have a lot to celebrate, we all have a lot to celebrate, and that is people finally decided they were going to become involved and go out and vote. And that is a win for everybody in the Commonwealth, and we need to look at that. And that's one of the things that I'm glad you asked me here to talk about, because ever since the election, starting almost hours after it appeared as though Governor-elect Beshear had won, the criticisms against Governor Bevin just started mounting up. I want to read you something that was written by Joe Girth at the Courier-Journal. Why did Matt Bevin lose, was the question he asked in his article. Matt Bevin lost because he is a jerk.
I know.
Now, first of all, that's an opinion, right? I mean, that's not a statement of fact. That's just an opinion that he has. And you know what the old saying is, opinions are like belly buttons. We all have one. This is Joe Girth's opinion. But interestingly enough, Joe Girth comes to that opinion and says in his article, now this is really incredible. It's not that the media was somehow biased against Bevin. It's that the consumers of the news in the cities saw Bevin's glad-handing, selfie-taking, Bible-thumping veneer and saw him for what he really was. Those losses, he says in his article, in the two largest cities where voters saw, listen to this, they saw Bevin's antics on the evening news each night in the Courier-Journal or the Lexington Herald-Leader every morning. Now, let me just point out a disconnect that Joe Girth just identified and admitted to. It's not the media's fault that people may agree with Joe Girth that the governor was a jerk, and some people are offering that as a suggestion why he lost, that he lost because of his personality, and I'll get into that in a minute. But for him to say that the media had nothing to do with it, but that every day when people looked at the news or they read the Courier-Journal or the Lexington Herald-Leader, they saw this, is, in my opinion, a symptom of a serious problem that we have in this country, and there's only one way to cure it. That means that the media was focused on those portions of what they saw in Governor Bevin because that's what they wanted the public to see.
Right.
And they didn't focus on the fact that the pension crisis was about to collapse our pension program, and what that meant for people was those who are living on their pensions and depend on it are at an age where they really don't have the ability to fight back. They don't have the resources to find some other source of income. They're counting on that pension. It's about to collapse. They didn't point out the efforts that Governor Bevin was going to try to save that pension. They didn't point out that in northern Kentucky, for example, which is strongly a pro-life area, that Governor Bevin was taking gigantic steps toward protecting the sanctity of life. They didn't point out, those are good things that he was doing. Those were accomplishments, but they point out that every day in the news media, they were seeing, the people of Kentucky were seeing the antics. Well, why were they seeing the antics? Because that's what the media chose to focus on. So for Joe Girth at the Courier-Journal to declare in his opinion that the governor is a jerk, and then say the reason that people voted against him is because he's a jerk, and furthermore, that the reason they think he's a jerk is because they saw it in the media all the time, but the media had nothing to do with it, suggests that the rest of us who hear those kinds of comments, in his mind, are stupid.
Right.
And we're not. We're not. We're paying attention. And because we're paying attention, people showed up and voted. Now, I think there's some lessons for the Trump campaign in this election. I don't think it's what the media is telling you. I think the lesson for the Trump campaign is you really can't depend upon the state organizations and the local organizations in the battleground states or the key states that are going to be important in that campaign next year to carry the day. And that's because, and I saw a defense of the fact that Governor Bevin did not carry Kenton County. I saw a defense of that published on Facebook by the Kenton County Republican Organization. And they pointed out that they'd sent out so many mailers, they'd done so much door-to-door, they'd made so many phone calls, so on and so forth. As if that is how you win a campaign. You know this, John. I've been involved in politics. My first political campaign was going door-to-door with my dad for Nixon and Lodge. I've been involved in politics since I was a kid. You know that. You and I were both on opposite sides back then, right? But I've been involved for a long time, and so I've watched as political strategies have developed. There was a point in time when the Republicans nailed it direct mail was a way to bypass the media, get the message in front of the voters, and was considered by the Republican Party to be the supreme method of getting votes. How many of us got mail this campaign? As soon as you saw it, it's an oversized postcard, you knew right away what it was, right in the trash. Mm-hmm. It wastes trees. Oxygen producing, carbon dioxide consuming trees. It wastes money, it wastes effort, and it's not as meaningful as it used to be. Phone calls. My phone rings all day long and somebody's trying to tell me that I need to renew the warranty on my vehicle, or it's open enrollment, I need to get my Medicare straightened out, or telling me my Google account needs to be updated. Something is always coming through on my phone, and I hang up as soon as I hear that. So robocalls and direct calls, those are not what carry the day anymore. You know, it's interesting, about 6 or 7 years ago, I proposed something, this is before Trump. I made a proposal, I wrote a white paper and delivered it to somebody very highly placed within the Republican National Committee, and suggested to them that I had discerned something was about to happen that we needed to be aware of. And I took a phrase from an old conservative and I said, now is not the time, the old conservative said, now is not the time to fight City Hall, now is the time to become City Hall. And I turned it and I said, I think now is not the time to fight the media, now is the time to become the media. I didn't realize, I was thinking more in terms of having some wealthy Republicans start their own news broadcast or their own newspaper. But Brad Parscale, who is the campaign manager for Donald Trump and did the intelligence work on internet and social media during the 2016 campaign, he took it to the next level. They did data mining. They found voters who were leaning their way on issues who they could reliably count on to vote for Donald Trump. And they found ways to contact them through social media and through their cell phones so that they could keep them in the loop and keep them informed and identify who was going to vote for them. There's 4 parts to a campaign. I've consulted with hundreds of candidates, I've designed and run many, many campaigns. And for the viewers, there's 4 parts to a campaign. First part is name recognition, key. Mm-hmm. Name recognition is key. Second part is likability. Third part is issue identification, and the fourth part is get out the vote. So they've got to know who you are. They got to like you before they'll even listen to what your stance is on the issues. But even if they know who you are, they like you, and they agree with you on the issues, if they don't get up and go vote for you,
that's right,
it doesn't count for anything. So those are the 4 parts of a campaign. Brad Parscale, on behalf of the Trump campaign, was able to mobilize those identifiable, reliable voters and get them to the polls. And this year, I don't know how many of your viewers may have gone to the rally in Lexington. Mm-hmm. People don't realize this, but the Trump campaign readily admits it. The reason they're having all these big rallies, not only does it generate enthusiasm and show an overwhelming amount of support, it's data mining. Everybody who goes has to give them their name, their address, their email address, and their cell phone number.
Right.
Now, I don't know about you, but I gave Donald Trump $25 once. I probably get 25 text messages a week from his campaign because they have my cell phone number. Data mining. And that is where my proposal to the RNC 6 years ago, that we need to have a way to bypass the media. And Donald Trump has done that with Twitter.
Yes.
He's done it with his campaign in many ways. That's where they took it to the next level and saw what I didn't see. But data mining is the key to campaigns these days. And so if you're ever on Facebook, anybody that's on Facebook and one of your friends posts a little survey, you know, do you have a tattoo? Have you ever had surgery? Ever been married before? Do you have a dog? All those kinds of personal things. That's not just for fun. Somebody's gathering that data. Somebody's logging that data.
Absolutely.
You know, if you go online, you find it right now, you might go online and try and find a pair of winter boots. And you might look at them, you like them, you think you'll go back and maybe buy them. For the next 2 weeks, everywhere you go online, an ad for those boots are going to pop up. That's because somebody's identified you specifically, and they're going to continue to put in front of you what they think is tempting to you. If you extend that out beyond just buying boots and think of all the information that we have voluntarily given to those who are interested in using it, they can pretty well identify and predict what our behavior is. And because they can predict what our behavior is, think about this for a minute. If your behavior can be predicted, your behavior can be controlled. They know what bell to ring to make you salivate.
Absolutely right.
So right now, in my view, what has happened is, and why I think the Trump campaign can take some lessons from this campaign, is that the Republican Party of Kentucky and many of the local organizations fell back on the tried and true methods of phone calls, direct mail, and door-to-door in an era where people do not leave their homes. Right now, your viewers are watching this on TV. We're streaming information into their house. Probably while they're watching this, they have their phones in their hand. And they probably looked at their phone. And they may even entered a comment on Facebook, probably critical of me, which is fine, for what I say on Facebook on their phone. People are receiving information in new ways. And the Republican Party of Kentucky, although there's just been a tremendous amount of enthusiasm reflected by the voters who turned out, it was not harnessed, in my view, to assist the governor. As a result of the enthusiasm alone, the down-the-ticket races won. I don't think there was a lot of campaign information out there about some of the down-the-ticket races. Some of them campaigned harder and more effectively than others. But I think that what has happened is that this was a test run for what the Democrats intend to do in 2020, and that is they're going to count on their friends in the media to call the president a jerk. They've called him a lot more. He's a misogynist, he's a racist, he's a Nazi, he's a white supremacist, he's a crook, he's a liar, he's a cheat, he's all these things. And they use their opinion of him without a lot of facts to back it up. And then somebody repeats their opinion, and eventually people sitting at home who don't go out anymore and don't socialize and don't mingle, probably have never met Governor Bevin, probably never met his wife or any of his children, don't know really much about him. All they know is what's being fed to them. So if the people who are feeding you the information are feeding you the information designed to control how you think, then you're really a victim of that process. But that is the process, in my view, that the press is using right now to malign the President of the United States. They used it to malign Governor Bevin. And quite frankly, when somebody loses a race, despite what the naysayers are saying after the election. In fact, one of Governor Bevin's friends even went on Facebook and said, I'm excited about the next 4 years or more with Governor Beshear. I'm looking forward to seeing a governor who doesn't get kicks out of being snarky and spiteful. That was one of Governor Bevin's friends who couldn't wait until the results were in to express an opinion about a friend. The problem we have is that people are focusing on the negatives. They're focusing on the bad things that they see, and they repeat it. People don't get me wrong, advertisers, news media, they know what people like to hear, right? Mm-hmm. They know that people like controversy. There's just something in us that rushes to those things, and they've been able to identify it. But people also like, apparently, and rush to porn. They rush to drugs. They rush to alcohol. And if that's being fed to them, they will continue to rush to that. It takes us as citizens to say, stop it. All right, maybe this person isn't the nicest person. Maybe they don't fit my description of the gentrified politician. But, you know, General Patton, for example, was not a gentrified individual. Pretty rough around the edges, pretty crass, but he was hired to do a job, and he did it very well. And the United States and Europe, the rest of the world, owe him a debt of gratitude for what he did. We need to stop focusing on the bad things about people and start focusing and reporting on the good things they do. And then let's compare the ideas for how to make the world a better place that two competing politicians might have, rather than saying, well, this one is this and that one is that, and name calling. It's terrible. I'm not involved in politics for that reason. You know, you mentioned my farm. At my farm, we mentor young people every year. We have interns come. We do our best to try and teach them these lessons. I try to exemplify that in what I do. Some of my friends who may be watching this that'll debate me on Facebook and criticize me, even if I disagree with them, I don't call them names. I try to keep it on a higher level. And I think that's the direction that we need to go. I think that's an important lesson that everybody on all sides of this race can agree on, because we really are trying to make the world a better place. And we're not going to do that by pointing out the flaws in other people. We all have flaws. Nobody's perfect, right?
That's right.
This morning before I came in here, I looked this. The Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the church in Rome, and it's the book of Romans. And in it he said, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Don't be conformed by this world. Don't be conformed by the criticisms that people level at each other in this world. Be transformed by the renewing. Refresh your mind. Realize people are trying to control what you think. They're feeding you what they want you to hear so that you form the opinions they want you to have. Renew your own mind. He also said, then you'll be able to test and approve what is good, pleasing, and perfect in the will of God. That is when you will see the truth. That's when you'll be able to see what's right and what's not right. In politics, they always said perception is reality, and all campaigns these days are focused on creating a perception. Mm-hmm. That perception can be deception, and that perception can also be the only thing people confuse with reality. The reality is who the person is. The reality is what the person has done. The reality is what the person has as a vision for the future. The reality is staring us in the face, but those who want us to think differently are creating a perception for us to believe in. I've been involved in politics a long time. I can tell you that creating a perception is key, right? Mm-hmm. That's what a campaign is. So if someone loses an election, that is not Joe Girth, that is not Governor Bevin's friends, a reflection on the person. It is absolutely a scorecard on the campaign. Governor Bevin suffered from a poorly executed campaign. And I can say that with confidence because if the person is what makes the difference, not the campaign, we wouldn't have had Barack Obama as president. We probably wouldn't have had a second term of Bill Clinton. Because once we know what the person is, half-term senator, really no background in the case of Barack Obama, a history that was basically hidden from the public, much about him still to this day unknown, a much better campaign. And for my friends on the left, I can make the same case because they're making it every day. They think that Hillary Clinton is the better candidate, was the presumptive president-elect. But she lost because Donald Trump had a better campaign. And that campaign was based upon data mining that identified the predictable response of people. It capitalized on that and persuaded more people in key areas to vote for him than for Hillary. So I'm glad you invited me, John, because I think literally it's an opportunity that you don't get very often. I don't. To have the chance to talk about real life in the context of faith. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you look at it, this is an opportunity for us to see the intersection of faith and politics in this race and refresh our minds. There is a lot of acrimony, a lot of vitriol in politics. It's a horrible atmosphere. And in Romans, Paul said, live in harmony with one another. Don't be proud, but enjoy the company of the lowly. Do not be conceited. And he also said, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Carefully consider what is right in the eyes of everybody. If it's possible on your part, live at peace with everybody. And do not avenge yourselves, but leave room for God's wrath, because it's written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. If we're going to refresh our minds and not be confounded by this world of politics. Maybe now is the time for us to take a second look at what our role is. It's one thing to be enthusiastic and go out and vote, but it's another thing to reward people who use negativity, criticism, conceit, and want to focus our attention on evil instead of good. It's time for us to disregard that and to use our own intelligence prayerfully to identify where we should go as a nation and respect everybody involved in the process. If we can't do that, we're doomed. And unfortunately, I'm not here to save anybody, but I am thrilled to have the opportunity to talk about how I think in this moment, at least I see from what my radio show used to be, the Marcus Carey perspective, I see an intersection and an opportunity for us to figure where faith and politics and governance and human interaction come together and use this as a transformative moment, if we're up to it. But by virtue of the fact that so many people got up and went out to vote, sounds to be like there are a lot of enthusiastic people out there. Maybe we can enlist them in our cause.
Well, there's one thing for certain, Mark, and as I told folks, Marcus was one of my best students, and Harry Rankin was one of my best students. One went on to be active in the Republican side, and one went on active to be in the Democratic side. And I said, I must have done something right. But if you've listened to Mark tonight on the show, one thing's for certain. The guy that gave me an A+ in teaching, student teaching, was right, because I did a daggone good job.
Well, thanks, Jim.
Wouldn't you say, Randy?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And June's probably in the background there, who's handling the cameras for us, Miss June Guyman-Stevenson, the smartest move I ever made, Marcus. And she's back there probably saying, I haven't seen John be so quiet for so long.
This morning.
Well, I think that's about to end, right?
You know, and I have to say, honestly, I agree with everything you had to say there. In perspective of the race itself, I know that Randy even had a situation out there where they had a bus out there for where they voted, and they had one of the largest turnouts you've ever seen, didn't they, Randy?
Absolutely. I think 1,100 in our area.
Huge turnout. I mean, the largest since '95, and that's just preliminarily.
Now, one thing I did notice, and I think that's important to say for the people out there to know, because right now, the race, I think, is settled, but not totally. Fair play is fair play, and you have the Democratic Republic, a system is set up with your Constitution and your laws that are passed governing elections, and Governor Matt Bevin does have the right and the responsibility, frankly, to assure that the election was handled properly as it was supposed to be. And he has a right to have a recanvass, which is going to take place in a few days. And after that, it's a little different than the normal other races that are held. There's special laws that are set up that turn this over to, if there are grievances that can be documented. For instance, in some areas in Lexington and Louisville, both, there were several precincts that had huge turnouts, and they were questioned. And so I won't get into what those were or what they weren't. That's up to the governor and his team. But he does have a right to explore those, and he's got 30 days before he has to notify the legislature. But in the governor's case, the law is set up that, and you can speak more to this directly, Mark, being an attorney, but the law is set up that he has 30 days to file a grievance with the Senate and the House, and then the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate appoint a I think it's 11-member committee to examine those complaints and to do research and check them out themselves on the election to make sure that the results are proper and honest and that the votes were tallied proper. And then they can rule on that case. Now, I hate to go back in history as an old history teacher, but there was a William Goebel and a William Taylor that was involved in a race back in, I think it was 1899, something like that, or maybe even before that. But it was 1800, early 1800s, 1799, I think. They had a race, and Taylor got the most votes, but they got into a battle, and they shot Goebel.
Shot Goebel.
and the legislature appointed him governor on his deathbed, and then when he died, his lieutenant governor took over, Beckham I think it was, and stayed governor for I think about 7 years.
I think the shot came from the Secretary of State's office.
That's right, right. So there is a precedent for doing this, and so that's going to be examined and looked at. And I don't think we should draw conclusions on anything of that, whether it's bad, good, evil, or not, because it is part of our democratic republic, is that how we handle our differences is through our laws and our procedures and test but verify, right?
Yeah, we used to do, for years I did the Northern Kentucky Bar Association Law Day program, putting lawyers into schools to talk with kids. Law Day, of course, was initiated during the Eisenhower administration to stand in stark contrast to May Day, which was May 1st of each year when the Soviet Union did that big military parade. And we wanted to celebrate that we don't rule by man in this country, we rule by law. And so when we went out to talk about these things, we had to remind kids that the rule of law is not like the rules at a swimming pool, no running. The rule of law is like the rule of a king. So some people lived under the rule of King Henry. Some people lived under the rule of a tribal king in Africa. We live under the rule of law. So rule of law is in the context of our ruler, not a rule such as speed limits. So when we talk about the rule of law means we're a nation that is not ruled by men, we are ruled by law. And the nice thing about that is we write those laws. Through our representatives, we govern ourselves through our representatives, and we write those laws. So, and that's another criticism that's being leveled against Governor Bevin, and you've mentioned it, I think, very accurately. His use of the process is not a process that he created, it's a process we created.
Right.
We wrote this in, and we didn't write it in for his benefit, we wrote it in for the benefit of every candidate for the governor in Kentucky. And you know, to criticize the use of that process, again, is allowing ourselves to be focused by other people on something negative, when we should be all celebrating the fact that we, the people, established a process to declare certainty in our elections, and we get to stand in witness to that being played out. That's another thing for us to celebrate. It's just another way of looking at the same thing, but if you look at the world, you and I were just talking about deer hunting. I live on a farm, had 2 little boys, and I would say to them all the time, look over there, see that deer? And they couldn't see it. And I'd tell them how to see a deer against all the background of the woods or a field. And when I was teaching Sunday school one day, I took some photos around my farm of baby rabbits laying in the weeds or deer standing in a fence row. And I brought them in and asked the kids in my Sunday school class, what do you see? And they would see a field, or they'd see woods, or they'd see weeds. But I'd point out the rabbit or the deer, and then they could see it. I'd show them other pictures, and they could see it. The point is, if you practice and train yourself to see the good things in the world, they become easier to see as time goes on. But you have to, first of all, have somebody focus your attention so you can separate the good out from the background noise, which is the bad. So even this process, you bringing up this process, another opportunity to reiterate, We need to see it for what it is. A legal process that we the people established to declare certainty in our elections, and we should all celebrate that it's there.
Absolutely.
And that it's going to play out. And when it's done, we can applaud ourselves for having thought through a situation like this in advance. Just another chance to say, look for the good in things. It'll get easier and easier to see as you go along.
One other thing, Mark and Randy, that I wanted to point out that is important to me. The many years that I worked with Gil Hammond, who's a WIOK 107.5 FM on the radio dial, and Tri-State Gospel. They do a great job there across the state, all three of their stations, including the half Spanish station down in Paris, Kentucky. But I wanted to point out this fact that in those early years in my life, I spent a great deal of time organizing and setting up the first teachers' organizations, Kentuckians for Better Schools with Bert T. Combs, and then KEPAC, the Kentucky Educators Political Action Committee, which I think probably in this particular race, they were more instrumental than any other race they've ever been involved in getting out their vote. Now that's good, and it also teaches us some lessons. And one of those lessons is that, and this is very important to me at least, is that when you look at the election results and you see where Governor Bevin was defeated heavier and lost the race, it basically was the urban areas where universities reside. It was Lexington, Louisville, even in northern Kentucky, over where Northern Kentucky University is in Campbell County. Boone County went strong for Bevin, but Kenton County about even, a little bit more for Beshear, and Campbell County heavy for Beshear. Not as heavy as like Lexington and Louisville, but heavier. And I think that there's an old wise sage that taught me some lessons as a mentor other than Bert T. Combs, and his name was locally. It was Otwell Rankin, who was a CPA and chairman of the Democratic Party. And as a young man, I rode around with him and I said, why are we Democrats? Because I was a Democrat for most of my life, as you folks know. I said, why are we Democrats? And he said, well, because we're more for the working man and woman and to help people. And he said, I said, well, what is our greatest weakness? He said, we have one great weakness. And I never will forget him telling me this. And he said, that weakness is that we are of a party that helps people, but we also are of a party that and his greatest fear was that someday we would grow into an electoral process where we found out that we could vote ourselves benefits, and that we could master the system and vote ourselves benefits. And part of the problem that I see today, and I'm not going to say this in a critical way, but I'm going to say it in a warning way that we need to look at, is that when these votes were cast across the state, particularly where they had these students voting also across the state, the voting students, and I watched how they returns came in on them, 67% in favor of Beshear. That told me a great deal when 7-year-olds and 17-year-olds are voting for Beshear, much heavier, that who's influencing them? And why are they influencing them? Well, this race, particular race here, turned into a really battle of the teachers, educators, NEA, and the civil workers, the public civil workers, the firemen, the government employees. Look at Frankfort itself, just in Franklin County, almost 2-to-1, heavier, 2-to-1 for Beshear over Bevin. That's your government employees. And when you look at that, and all where the universities were located is where actually Beshear was a winner. Now, What I'm saying is that school teachers, and I as a teacher, tried very desperately to be nonpartisan in my teaching. That's the reason I mentioned Harry Rankin and you, was because teachers are to teach government, but not teach personalities or who to vote for.
Do they teach government anymore?
Well, I've been trying to get them to do better. I had to say in one way, and I was talking to Gil about this, one way I was thrilled to see the teachers so active as they were, because they were active, and I know that they were active because I had my own family members coming to me and telling me that so-and-so teacher had told them to vote for Beshear. And they saw it as their livelihood for their pensions, et cetera. But ironically, the only governor in the last 3 decades that has actually funded the pensions was the fellow by the name of Matt Bevin. And this perception thing you talked about.
That's exactly all it is.
It was the perception was that he was taking away their pensions, and that.
And whose fault is that? I mean, if you want to assign blame to anybody, which is not being negative, just trying to figure out why did teachers have that perception, if the case can be made, and I believe that it can, that he's the only governor that tried and did fund the pension, has really tackled an issue of such great importance to so many families. Why did they perceive that? And that is because the Democrat campaign organization, aided by the press, was able to create a perception opposite of what perhaps was the reality. But in politics, perception becomes
Absolutely.
reality.
And you
so
gotta
the
give 'em credit.
but the campaign of the governor failed him in this regard. In my opinion, that's and literally in my view, every time you see an election, the election is actually a scorecard on who had the best campaign.
Plus the fact, you had to remember, you had both newspapers, major newspapers, the Courier Journal and the Lexington Herald Leader, both endorsing Beshear. And not only just endorsing, they don't just endorse anymore, my goodness gracious sakes alive. The media is on constant tearing up.
As Joe Girth pointed out.
That's right.
Every night and every morning on all of the news channels in the major cities.
The negativity.
Absolutely.
And attacking.
And creating a perception that benefited one candidate over another.
And they're trying to do the same thing on the impeachment thing, which to me is
all
a
it is.
phony baloney.
All it is.
Just a absolutely disgrace and use of the fact of impeachment and the law, abusing it with whistleblowers. I wrote a big post today about whistleblowers and how a whistleblower, if you got a problem, if you're a government employee, go to your boss, your superior, and tell him if you see corruption. If he doesn't take care of it, go to his superior. And if they don't take care of it, resign your position and then go to the press if need be.
This
But
guy's not a
resign your
whistleblower.
position. This guy is not a
he's
whistleblower
an
at all.
activist, is all he is.
He's
He's
a
an
political
activist.
activist, and along with his attorney, who said in his own tweets about we've started the coup, the takeover of the government by the deep state. And anybody that doesn't know anything at all about government doesn't know about the fact that there is a deep state. I was with Congressman John Breckinridge in Washington, and I saw the deep state firsthand, where they would look you in the eye and tell you, well, you're only here for 2 years, maybe 4 years.
That's right.
We will be here for a lifetime. That's right. And crossing them and doing what's right. And but I want to say this, because I want to get into the farm some too. I want to say this in closing, that regardless of what happens, and we let the law work its way through, I'm proud of Kentuckians that did go out and vote and took the time to do so from all parties, Tea Party, Independent, Republican, and Democrats. That was a magnificent thing to see, and we need to see more of it. But we need to learn and study our candidates, and as I say in my post, I try to say, the Holy Spirit's job is to convict, God's job is to judge, my job, our job, is to love, and to love everybody, red, yellow, brown, black, and white. They are all precious in Jesus' sight, and we need to practice that. And all parties need to practice that and come together, and when the election's over with and things are settled, support the president, support the governor, whether it's Steve Beshear or Matt Bevin or Donald Trump and Mike Pence or whomever the Democrats. If they win, support them to the best extent that you can possibly do, and the same thing for the president. Get off his back, get out of his life, and be good citizens and support them. Now, Marcus, I can't be all politics here. I want you to tell us about
That'd
the
be a
farm.
switch.
Tell us about the farm and the website where you can be reached. And
Well, the name of the farm is Steepleview Farm, and it's named Steepleview Farm because it's located directly across the street from the Poplar Grove Baptist Church, which has this beautiful white steeple. And it's interesting because the sun comes up over the steeple every morning, and when the sun sets, the steeple is the last thing every day to go dark. I've been there, had the farm for 35 years, and I see it all day, every day. It's been just an incredible inspiration to me to have that reminder that God is with us at all times. So Kentucky has a way of registering farm names, and so as soon as I bought my farm, I registered it as Steepleview Farm. And our website, steepleviewfarm.com or steepleviewfarm.net, either one will get you there. But we started off as a traditional Kentucky farm, tobacco, cattle, and hay. But my wife and I were homesteaders when we first moved there. People think lawyers start off rich. I started off working my way through college and law school, going to school at night and working during the day, and started my own practice right out of law school. And we were homesteaders, raised our own food, raised all of our own food, learned how to preserve food, learned how to farm, didn't know how to farm. Raised in Erlanger, so my experience with farms was scant at best. And now we have an absolutely gorgeous farm, which is open to the public all the time. We invite people to come.
we have a little store there,
We have a little store there. We raise organically raised, not certified organic, but organically raised produce, and we sell it to the public, and we have people who are farm partners. They join our farm partnership to support what we do, and they have the opportunity to come, and we have seminars, we have educational opportunities, and we allow them to walk their dog, fly frisbees, fly kites, play with their kids, fish in the lake, hike on the hiking trails, where there are inspirational signs throughout the woods, camp in the campground. All of it is open to the public, and opportunities are available on the website. And anything
Where's it located?
It's located in the very northern tip of Owen County. So it's right down I-71, just a little north of the
So
Kentucky
you
Speedway.
can get there from anywhere from around the state.
20 minutes from Florence, 30 minutes from Erlanger, and we invite people to come at any time. And one of the things that we hope to do, and we do every year, is we always raise food to sell or to give to our farm partners, and whatever's left, we deliver to the food pantry. So we're trying to make use of our time and our land in a socially responsible way, consistent with our faith.
Tomorrow is Monday is actually Veterans Day. I'm going to be over tomorrow with the Guyman family, June Guyman Stevenson's family, and honoring her father, who was a World War II vet. There will be lots of other veterans' families over there in Fort Thomas, and with their ceremony over there tomorrow at 12 o'clock. I look forward to being a part of that and filming that. And they'll be over there at the fort at the Charters Freedom Monument, located in front of the Military Museum. And then one other thing I want to remind people of, and that's Thanksgiving. Our next taping show will be December the 4th with guest of Kenton County Judge Executive Chris Knockelman, and we'll talk about the new Kenton County Courthouse, the Government Center at 1840 Simon Kenton Way in Covington, Kentucky. Look forward to having Judge Knockelman on. We've had Judge Pendry and we've had Judge Moore and the judges from some of the other counties, but I want to ask Randy to close us with something on Thanksgiving, Randy, and that is all of this elections, regardless of what party you belong to, it all comes down to God's will and doing things with a godly principle manner, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
You want to enlighten us a little bit there?
I think the nail's been hit on the head with focusing in on the things we can be thankful for. And there's so many. You know, our process, our forefathers' forethought, which was very deep when you start to look at it, and just the privilege that we have of living in a country where we're free. One for us through our veterans in a very large way that we celebrate right now, but even beyond all of the branches of our government, we can be thankful for.
That's for sure. And Marcus, you got anything you'd like to say finally about our show today, or about what you're doing?
John, you and I have known each other, I can't believe this now, for half a century. Half a century. That's how long we've been friends. And I applaud your determination to continue to bring information and insight to the people of Northern Kentucky, and I thank you for that, and for being my friend and my teacher, and for giving me the chance to be here today.
Well, God bless you, and I feel the same way. Randy, you want to close out with us? Let's just sing, what do you say, our national anthem? Can we do that?
I think so.
Somebody's going to have to work the camera, because you sing the national anthem, I stand up.
Okay.
Okay? I'm not going to sit here for the singing of the national anthem. You stay seated. You got a bad wheel.
I got a bad 2 or 3 bad wheels. Are you ready, Randy?
Yeah. Were you going to sing it?
Just go ahead and let you sing it for us, Randy. Can you do that?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
God bless America. God bless Kentucky, and praise the Lord, and pass the ammunition of godly principles. Love and honor and obey. My mother, Garnet Bingham Stevenson, wrote this, and I received it from my Aunt Frederica and Uncle Don Bingham, and she went on to heaven. My mother did in 1965. Aunt Frederica, the only living one of my aunts and uncles that's still alive, just turned 90, and we celebrated her birthday at the Mount Zion Baptist Church. But I remember holding the hands of my mother when she told me how my father would be saved. And it turned out to be so true. And I thank God for her and him every day. She was a wonderful, darling Christian woman and a leader in life. I miss her so much. Mothers are a blessing to all. I hope you appreciate what she wrote as much as I have. The Beauty of Life Spent in Service for God and Humanity by Garnet Bingham Stevenson. There is nothing in the world more beautiful than a life spent in the unselfish service to others. Sometimes it may seem to the world that a life is humble and lowly and not of much value, but there are many instances where these lives are like the modest violet, sending out a beauty and a fragrance that is appreciated by both God and man. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof the world, and they that dwell therein. We are all stewards. This is not an owner of anything. God alone owns. He estimates our gifts for the advancement of his cause, not by their size, but by what we have left. May we labor on, seeking not for glory and applause, knowing that he who clothes the lilies of the field and hears the ravens when they cry will richly repay. Oh, the wrongs that we may righten. Oh, the hearts that we may lighten. Oh, the skies that we may brighten, helping just a little. In the field of destiny, we shall reap what we have sown. Let us therefore put a little sunshine into the unfortunate lives. Our mercies are doubly sweet when they are shared with those who would otherwise feel the bitterness of want. Big deeds are often glass, while the small ones are our diamonds. Wrought into gold, we that pass down life's hours so carelessly might make the dusty way a path of flowers if we would try. Then very gentle deed we've done, or kind word given, unto gold would be made, us wondrous rich in heaven. Life and living are mighty themes. Life is no mere dream, but a sincere reality, and a supreme stewardship of which we shall one day have to render an account. Hence, let us all faithfully strive to fulfill life's greatest purpose. Build a little fence of trust around today. Fill the space with living deeds and therein stay. Look not through the sheltering bars of tomorrow. God will help you to bear the burdens of others for him along life's way. Without the shadow, we would not appreciate the sunshine. Clouds need not eclipse the joy in your heart. Even though the skies drizzle, your eyes can be bright. Just because it rains is no reason it to be gloomy. Life's struggle is hard enough at the best. So let us give every uplift possible. Remember that life is not all song. There is much wrong in all of us. So be ready to give a lift where needed. Some lead dreary lives and toil beneath heavy loads. When we find one of our fellow men on the downward road, don't pass him with a gloomy frown. You may have troubles, too, but he needs a smile from you. Say, brothers, lend a helping hand. Upon the side of weakness stand. Another's burden shared by you will give him courage new. The world has need of friendships true. So give a lift. So give a lift to your fellow man.